North Korea knows how to show you real life, real streets, real school children, a real subway car, a real store, and real people who smile into the camera. But there is one detail. You cannot choose for yourself where to turn, whom to speak with, or what to inspect. You are shown not an empty stage set, but a selected fragment of the DPRK. Perhaps what you see is not a completely fabricated picture. Perhaps that is precisely why it acts more powerfully. A child really can be delighted by a ride, a vendor really can take pride in their work, and a resident of Pyongyang really can love their city. But beyond the frame of this shot exist markets, power outages, family restrictions, a closed information network, and entire regions that a tourist almost never sees. Today, we will try to understand where the staging ends and everyday life begins. Why women became the engine of the unofficial economy, how the country survived the famine of the 90s, why the Pyongyang metro resembles an underground palace, what a family's social background can signify, and why a person with a smartphone can still be cut off from the global internet. And in the finale, we will ask the most uncomfortable question. If the scene shown to you is real, but cut out of an enormous context, can it be considered the truth about the entire country? Let us agree on accuracy from the outset. North Korea is closed, there is little full-fledged statistics, and much information comes from defectors, international organizations, satellite surveillance, and researchers. Therefore, I will not say that every DPRK resident lives the same way, nor that every official frame is a lie. It seems to me that this caution does not weaken the story, but makes it more honest. Let us start with the city that is meant to convince a foreigner. The country is developing and confidently looking toward the future. Pyongyang greets you with wide avenues, spacious squares, monuments, and buildings designed for a long shot. There are new residential neighborhoods, parks, restaurants, shops, sports complexes, and metro stations with marble columns and heavy chandeliers. There is little of the advertising cacophony typical of a metropolis in the city, so architecture and state symbols receive almost all the camera's attention. But Pyongyang is not just the capital. The ability to live here permanently is tied to administrative rules, profession, political reliability, and family history. For many citizens, moving to the capital is not an ordinary personal decision like looking for a more profitable job. The city is perceived as a special level of access to education, healthcare, goods, and career opportunities. The Encyclopedia Britannica reference book explains the history of the DPRK through the division of the Korean Peninsula, war, the construction of a socialist state, and prolonged isolation. But behind the historical words lies an everyday question: exactly where a person has the right to live, work, and study. A place on the map here can be not just an address, but part of a life opportunity. A tourist sees an even narrower version of the capital. Foreigners are accompanied by guides, the trip itinerary is prepared in advance, and the places to visit are not chosen randomly. This does not mean that all the people encountered during the excursion are playing fabricated roles. They are real. But the route itself is arranged so that you see a certain slice of the country and cannot freely compare it with any other. You can enter a school, a factory, a museum, or a store, but you do not just turn into one from the street. Someone organized the meeting in advance, determined the order of questions, and explained what is acceptable to film. The state controls not only the answer, but also the very possibility of asking a question. I believe this is an important distinction. Saying everything in Pyongyang is fake is just as inaccurate as declaring the avenue you saw to be the complete picture of the DPRK. The city is real, the people are real, the emotions can be real. What is controlled is the window through which you are allowed to look at them. And if the urban picture can be selected, the sound is harder to select. For many residents, the morning in North Korea does not begin with a personal playlist or a smartphone notification. In residential areas, loudspeaker systems operate, broadcasting announcements, music, and state programs. Some testimonies mention an early start to the broadcasts, around 5 in the morning, although the exact schedule depends on the location and time period. For a school child, this can be a normal background. For a worker, a signal for the start of the day. And for a foreigner, auditory proof of how strongly public space enters private life. The loudspeaker does not ask whether you want to listen to the news today. It simply becomes part of the street. In rural areas, people head out to the fields early. In cities, institutions open and traffic begins. Along the demilitarized zone, South Korea and the DPRK have also used loudspeakers in various years as a tool of information confrontation. Music in such a place turns out not to be only music. It can be a household signal, a political message, and part of the struggle for attention. It seems to me this is one of the most powerful images of North Korean everyday life. Control does not necessarily look like a person who stops you at the door every time. Sometimes it sounds from a loudspeaker and gradually turns into a familiar background that people stop noticing. Now, let us go underground. The Pyongyang Metro often makes an impression on tourists that is completely unlike ordinary urban transport. The stations are decorated with mosaics, columns, high-vaulted ceilings, and chandeliers. Instead of the feeling of a cramped underground tube, the image of a ceremonial palace emerges. In other megacities, the metro usually shows speed, crowds, advertisements, hurry, phones, announcements in several languages. In Pyongyang, it demonstrates order, history, and state aesthetics. Passengers stand in lines, move calmly, and rarely create the usual rush hour noise. Of course, a few tourist snapshots do not allow describing the behavior of all passengers every day. But the station itself remains an important symbol. Even infrastructure here must simultaneously perform a practical function and tell an ideological story. In the carriage, you can see people who are going to work, reading, or looking at their phones. It is precisely such simple scenes that particularly disrupt the familiar image of a closed country. Before you are not museum figures, but ordinary passengers. But their ordinariness exists within a system of rules of which the tourist knows far from everything. The real turning point of history happened not in the metro, but in the markets. In the 90s, North Korea experienced a severe food crisis and the destruction of the previous distribution system. Precise estimates of the number of dead vary because the country did not publish full statistics. But the scale of the crisis itself is confirmed by many studies, testimonies, and reports from international organizations. When the state system stopped reliably providing for people, families began to seek their own ways of survival. They exchanged items, transported food, grew vegetables, traded and created connections that did not fit into the official economic model. Thus, the Jangmadung, markets that became an important part of everyday life, became entrenched. Women played a special role in this change. While many men continued to be registered at state-assigned workplaces, women bought goods, bargained, sought suppliers, and supported the family budget. In the markets, food, clothing, household items, Chinese electronics, batteries, and medicine were sold. Trade might not be fully legal, but without it, many families could not cope. The human rights organization Human Rights Watch describes the restrictions faced by residents of the DPRK, including pressure on markets, movement, and access to information. This is the North Korean paradox. The state restricts independent economic activity, but at the same time needs it because official distribution cannot cover all needs. I support the view in which women here are regarded not as an exotic detail, but as people who change the economic mechanics of the family. The market gave them not full freedom in the political sense, but gave them experience of independent decision-making, money, connections, and influence within the home. This is a quiet change that may turn out to be more important than loud slogans. Along with the markets, a new gap appeared between the official and real value of labor. On paper, a person may hold a state position. In life, the stability of a family depends on whether someone knows how to buy goods cheaper, find the right intermediary, exchange currency, or obtain a spare part for repairs. In a formally unified society, different levels of access gradually emerge. The capital elite, families with good backgrounds, military, officials, traders, and residents of regions where choices are significantly fewer. The United Nations World Food Program points to serious problems with malnutrition and food sustainability in the DPRK. The organization's page mentions about 10.7 million undernourished people and stunting in approximately 18% of children, as well as a constant shortage of arable land, machinery, and fertilizers. These numbers cannot be turned into a description of every home, but they show the scale of systemic vulnerability. For a tourist, food in Pyongyang may look quite convincing. A restaurant, a neatly served dish, rice, noodles, kimchi, meat, or homemade alcohol. And this is not necessarily theatrical props. But the restaurant plate does not tell what nutrition looks like in a remote province, what happens during a poor harvest, and what share of the family income goes to food. Drinks in the DPRK also become part of this dual picture. In cities, people meet in restaurants, have dinner, and socialize. In families, they may independently prepare alcoholic drinks from rice or corn of memorable events, but tourist accounts of this often sound as if home production is equally common everywhere. I would not draw such a conclusion without regional statistics. It is more accurate to say home and local beverages are indeed mentioned in accounts, but the extent of the habit depends greatly on location and prosperity. The most noticeable divide does not run between the restaurant and the market, but between information that can be obtained and information that has to be sought out. In North Korea, a smartphone does not mean free access to the world. The phone can be used for communication, photos, and permitted internal services, but the global internet is inaccessible or extremely limited for most residents. The internal Kwangmyong network provides access to domestic resources, educational materials, and information services. But this is not the same as an open network where the user can independently navigate to any website. Imagine a modern smartphone that looks familiar, but only opens a pre-limited digital territory. The device exists, the habit of using a screen exists, but the global stream of news and platforms does not. For a person from any country where the internet has become an invisible part of daily life, this is hard to feel until you imagine that the search bar does not lead anywhere. Human Rights Watch specifically speaks about restrictions on freedom of expression, access to information, and movement. In such an environment, a foreign film or TV series can become more than just entertainment. It shows different clothes, different housing, a different way of talking to parents, a different level of consumption, and a different picture of the future. Therefore, the authorities fear not only political texts. Sometimes the very experience of comparison turns out to be dangerous. A person may not know the entire foreign program, but can already notice that people abroad travel, work, joke, get acquainted, and argue differently. Comparison slowly changes perceptions even when it cannot be discussed openly. But one should not imagine young people as a single secret opposition. Some young people accept official norms, others cautiously experiment with clothing, music, and trade, and yet others simply want to get a job, housing, and a peaceful life. Changes occur not as one big protest, but as many small decisions. Appearance and personal relationships also change gradually. A family may still value a stable government position, but at the same time, respect a person who knows how to earn money through trade. For a woman, a man's status may be important, but his ability to provide for the household in times of change becomes no less important. After the pandemic, border closures, and economic hardships, the value of practical reliability has become even more noticeable. Here, it is important not to confuse economic independence with complete social freedom. A woman who successfully trades gains more influence within the family, but this does not mean that she automatically gains the right to freely choose her place of residence, profession, or political stance. It seems to me that it is precisely such intermediate states that are more interesting than the loud formula, "society has completely changed." Another contrast is visible at night, when satellite images show North Korea as much darker than its neighbors. Bright light is concentrated in Pyongyang and certain industrial zones, while many other areas are more dimly lit. Satellite imagery does not tell the story of every family, but it shows the difference in infrastructure and access to energy. In some regions, electricity is not supplied continuously. Families schedule their activities around the hours when there is light, using batteries, lanterns, and other energy sources. A school child may do homework in a lit public place, and household chores are planned around the power grid's operation. This does not necessarily look like a constant catastrophe in every home. More often, it becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an invisible part of daily life. In Pyongyang, the contrast is especially noticeable. Central streets, monuments, and important buildings must be illuminated because the capital is the showcase of the state. But a bright center does not prove that the same infrastructure is available to the entire country. A photograph of a well-lit avenue can be truthful and simultaneously misleading if the viewer takes it as representing the average standard of living. Social inequality begins even earlier with one's origin. The system that researchers call Songbun is usually described as a classification linked to the political reliability of a family. Various sources mention a division into major groups and numerous subcategories, but the exact structure and the actual application of the system are closed. It cannot be imagined as a simple document that lies equally openly on the desk of every official. The meaning of Songbun lies elsewhere. The past of a family can influence a person's future. One's origin, the position of one's ancestors after the war, connections with foreigners, religious background, or suspicion of disloyalty can affect education, profession, place of residence, and family prospects. People may not see the full classification, but they feel its consequences. The UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the DPRK spoke of systematic violations and deep state interference in the lives of citizens. This is a more reliable basis for a conversation about the structure of power than a separate sensational story about who is supposedly not allowed to wear certain clothing. I believe that the inherited assessment of the family is one of the heaviest ideas in this system. A person is responsible not only for their own actions, but also for the shadow of the past they did not choose. In such an environment, social mobility becomes not just a matter of ability. It turns into negotiations with family history and state distrust. At the other pole is the mass performance Arirang. Tens of thousands of participants can simultaneously move, sing, dance, and create images on the stands using colored cards. From above, the crowd turns into a giant living canvas. The effect is stunning, but behind the beauty lie months of rehearsals, discipline, and the ability to subordinate individual movement to the overall design. For the state, this is an ideal symbol. A multitude of people become one image. For the viewer, it is a spectacle that cannot be forgotten. For the participants, it is a lot of work requiring time and precision. In this block, you cannot choose only one emotion. Arirang can simultaneously be an achievement of collective organization, a cultural performance, an instrument of state representation, and a heavy duty for those who participate in the preparation. I would not call it either pure propaganda or simply a beautiful dance. The meaning lies precisely in the tension between these two descriptions. Even the calendar in North Korea long emphasized the country's separateness. The Juche system counted years from 1912, so the date of Kim Il-sung's birth. As a result, the familiar date turned into a different designation, linked not to a religious event or an international era, but to the founder of the state ideology. However, the practice of using this calendar changed, so today such claims need to be checked against current official documents rather than automatically transferred from an old video. If you look at the DPRK only through unusual customs, you can forget about the external pressure that shaped this system for decades. After the war, the country built a model of a siege state. The authorities explained the restrictions by the threat from outside and military spending and closure by the necessity of survival. The nuclear program became part of this logic. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, regularly points to the development of North Korea's nuclear activities and the limited access of inspectors to facilities. This is not just a technical topic. Missiles and nuclear facilities affect sanctions, relations with neighbors, and the amount of resources available to the civilian economy. The UN Security Council, through the sanctions regime 1718, restricts supplies, financial transactions, and other areas related to the DPRK's nuclear and missile programs. Supporters of sanctions consider them a way to pressure the leadership, while opponents point out that restrictions can complicate humanitarian aid. Therefore, sanctions cannot be described as a simple button that either punishes the regime or creates famine. The real consequences depend on enforcement, exceptions, and how the authorities distribute scarcity within the country. The Ministry of Unification of the Republic of Korea shows in its statistics that the number of North Koreans arriving in the south has varied by year and depended sharply on border control, the pandemic, and the political situation. Defection from the DPRK is not a tourist adventure or a quick crossing of a line on a map. It is more often associated with risk to the person themselves and their relatives, money to intermediaries, months of waiting, and fear of being returned. The U.S. State Department warns foreigners about the risk of detention in North Korea and the limited possibilities of consular assistance. For a tourist, this means a simple rule. You cannot go there with the logic of, "I'll figure it out on the spot." Even an ordinary photograph, an argument with a guide, or a careless phrase can be perceived differently than in an open country. And here we return again to the question of the camera. What exactly can it show? It can show a subway where passengers stand calmly. It can film a market where people buy food. It can capture a school child laughing, a female athlete training, or a family celebrating a holiday. All of this can be real. But the camera does not show who did not get on the route, who was not allowed to move, where the electricity was cut off, what question cannot be asked, and how many people do not have access to the same capital. This is the main feature of North Korea. Reality here is not necessarily replaced by a stage set. It can be taken out, edited, and shown without the adjacent frame. The same city can be real for a resident of the center and an inaccessible symbol for a person from the provinces. The same phone can be a modern device, and at the same time, a door that opens only in one direction. The Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, with its pyramidal silhouette, has become one of the country's most recognizable buildings. Its construction began in 1987, then work stopped for a long time, and its exterior turned the high-rise into a symbol of ambition, delay, and incompleteness. In it, one can see the architectural dream of the state, to show power and modernity even when the project faces a shortage of resources and time. But one should not end the story with the building. North Korea is not only portraits of leaders, marches, closed borders, and missiles. It is also people who search for food at markets, repair appliances, raise children, ride the subway, argue with relatives, laugh, fall in love, and try to build at least some kind of predictability. I do not support either the romanticization of the DPRK as a country of order, or the simplified image in which all residents are supposedly equally unhappy and deprived of their own will. The first option repeats the official showcase. The second strips people of complexity and dignity. The truth lies in a more difficult place. The state indeed controls a huge part of life, but the people within it still find space for trade, choice, adaptation, and personal relationships. Therefore, North Korea is not what you think in the sense of an easy debunking. It is more complex. Within it, beautiful subways and restricted mobility can coexist, smartphones and a closed internet, a real market and state pressure, a mass celebration and months-long discipline, a capital with bright lights and regions where electricity becomes an event. For me, the main conclusion is this. The most dangerous thing is not a false frame, but a truthful frame without context. It does not necessarily deceive. It simply does not show what remained beyond the borders of the route. And now write in the comments which detail of North Korea surprised you the most. The Jangmadang markets, the Pyongyang metro, loudspeakers, the closed internet, the Songbun system, or the contrast between the capital and the provinces. If you are interested in documentary stories in which beautiful footage is checked against facts, subscribe to the channel. The next country will also turn out to be not nearly as simple as its photograph. The full list of sources is in the description. Information about entry rules, safety, sanctions, the humanitarian situation, and the policies of the DPRK requires separate verification against current official data. This episode does not replace consular recommendations, international reports, or professional research.